Hey, I'm Jessica Allah, and this is my very first episode of Why Do I Do That? I thought I would start my first episode by just giving you a little bit of background information about who I am, what I do, why you should listen to me, and what brought me here. So, I'm a projector in human design, I'm an Aquarius, I'm a mum, I'm an ex-wife, I'm a girlfriend, but none of those things are actually who I am or really give you any idea about the woman that I was born to be. So I want to talk to you about where this concept of why do I do that came from. It was actually originally a segment. It was my most popular segment on Instagram, where I would have a question box and people would write in their questions around behaviors, patterns, thoughts that they would have. And I would give what my clients called is 1 minute free therapy. So I would answer their questions and I would basically come back to them with, this is probably why you have this behavior, this is why you have this thought, it's probably come from here. And I found that like 99% of the time I was hitting the nail on the head, and people were like, how did you know that about me? A complete stranger. So people were loving it, and over the last 3 years it's been my most popular segment. And I thought, in a way that I can sort of give back to everybody that's been following me and listening to me and to build more of a community, is to answer your questions in far more depth. So you can actually start to get some roadmap towards healing. So in order for, I guess for me, why do I do that was also the question that I asked myself over and over and over for the first 20 something years of my life. I would constantly struggle and I'd be asking myself, why do I feel like this? Where does this come from? Why do I constantly feel suffocated? Why do I feel trapped? Why do I feel like there's this darkness inside of me, or there's this dark hole that I keep going down? And I had no understanding of why I continued to feel this way and why I continued to go in these patterns and these circles. And so why was such a big question for me. So I started healing when I was 20 years old, and I spent 10 years healing myself before my brain actually felt safe to uncover what was the deepest source of my pain. And the most interesting thing about my life is that I had regular flashbacks of these biggest traumas, and I had hints kind of tangled in everywhere, everyday life. I had everyday triggers and things like that, and yet my brain constantly protected me from seeing what was right there in front of my eyes. And this is how repressed memory works, and it's something that's so misunderstood, and it is something that I will talk about in further episodes. But it's the most interesting thing is also the way that I remembered. So before I remembered these really big traumas, I had other traumas that I had to work through. And I guess I want to tell you my life story because I want you to understand that anybody can heal. There are so many people that say to me, if you have complex trauma or you have complex PTSD, you're not able to heal. It's just something that you live with. And that was never good enough for me. I was always like, no, that's not my reality. That's not going to be my life. I'm going to find a way to heal it. And I've been really passionate about doing that. It has been my obsession. And so before this big trauma, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, and trigger warning, it's intense, it's big, it's not easy to hear. So definitely a little trigger warning there for you. But before I remembered that, healing entered my life one day when I had just started dating my ex-husband, and I was obviously in love, and we don't want to say bad things about him on here, but he was not really wanting to spend a lot of time with me, even from the beginning of the relationship. And he one day said to me, I said to him, I want to spend more time with you. I feel like you're always with your friends and you're always doing things with other people and you never want to spend time with me. And he said to me, almost word for word, if you don't stop being so needy, I will break up with you. And it was this little moment where I should have ran, but instead I was like, oh, I am needy. There's something wrong with me. Why am I so needy? Why am I like this? And my mum was a self-help Buddhist guru lady. And so I said to her, okay, I need to start working on myself. You've been preaching all this stuff to me. I've hated it my whole life. I'm ready to start working on myself. I was 20 years old at the time. And she gave me this book, Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. And I started reading this book and I was like, all right, I'm going to start working on myself. I'm going to look at, how can I change? Is there a way to change? And then I opened up this book and I started learning about beliefs and perception and how your beliefs create your reality. And I was mind blown. I was like, what is this world? And so much was starting to make sense. And she started to talk about trauma and how there's different types of trauma. And I started getting this little picture of, actually, I do have some stuff to work on. And I was reading this book and I put it down and I started doing some of the journaling exercises. And this was on a Saturday afternoon. I popped it away. And then on the Sunday night at about 6 p.m., I had what I now know as a body flashback, but also borderline panic attack, where I felt like I was trapped in the past. And something in that book had triggered me. And I was taken back to this moment when I was 6 or 7 years old and I was in the car with my dad and I was being dropped back to my mum's house and I didn't want to leave my dad. They were divorced at the time. And every Sunday at that same time, I would be dropped back and I wouldn't want to leave him. And on Sunday at 6 p.m, when I had read this book, it had triggered this feeling. And I ended up getting up and going into the bathroom and I was sitting down and trying to control my breathing and figure out what was going on. And I had all of these feelings of anger towards my stepdad and towards my mum. And I ended up, around that exact time, my mum had sent me a message being like, how did you go with the book? Or something along those lines. And I was, a rational 20-year-old. And I said to her, I don't ever want to see you again. I don't want to see you. I don't want to see Donnie, who is my stepdad. And I just was like, I don't want to see you anymore. And for context, my stepdad, I have a great relationship with him now, but he was a very verbally abusive man. He was really aggressive. He was a bully, for lack of better words. He would say a lot of awful things. He would yell. He would scream in your face. He would really frightening as a child. So I had a lot of resentment towards my mum for not protecting me, and I didn't want to be there. I wanted to be with my dad, which doesn't really make sense when you find out the rest of the story, but I wanted to be with my dad. He was my source of love at that time. And so my mum had messaged me at this exact moment saying, how did the book go? And I said to her, I don't want to see you ever again, and I don't want to see Donnie anymore. I'm done. And she was obviously pretty confused. She was like, what do you mean? Where's this coming from? And I told her that the book had brought some stuff up and that I didn't want to talk about it. So she actually offered to send me to a healing. And at the time I was like, oh, all that woo-woo shit. I'm not into that stuff, Mum. I'm not into your spiritual things. I don't want to go see a healer. But she offered to pay and it was $200, 20 years old. I was like, yep, cool. I'll take it. I can't afford that. I'll just give it a shot. I'll see what happens. And I went to this lady's house. I was super judgmental. I walked in and she had crystals everywhere and she had purple hair and she had all these cards and I was just like, oh, yeah, okay, this is not going to do anything. I was so skeptical. And what she did was actually called theta healing. And anyway, I went in and she asked me some questions and she got me to relax, and I had no idea what I was doing or why I was doing it, but she got me to do this little meditation thing, and she did this session and I cried and I talked about stuff, and she asked me if I wanted to forgive my stepdad and move forward, and I was like, I guess so. It's probably not helping me to hold on to it. And she did this technique and I left, and 2 days later I walked into my mum's house and I saw my stepdad and I gave him a hug, and everything has been good with him ever since. And we've talked about it and we've healed together, and the way that I was thinking was different. The way that I was seeing was different. Everything started to change. And I was like, what the fuck did she do? And because I wasn't a spiritual person, I was like, there has to be a logical explanation as to what she's just done. I couldn't understand that it was possible that what she'd just done. Like I had to know, and it became my obsession. I had to know how healing worked. I had to know how the brain worked. I had to know how you could heal that rapidly. And so I started to go on this journey, and I started to go back to her and go to other healers, and I started to work on these traumas that I had that I was aware of. So I started to, I guess, try and find the source of my pain, the source of why I was struggling, because up until this point, I had struggled, and I had not even, I guess, registered that I'd struggled. So through my teens, many times I was suicidal, but I guess when you don't talk to anyone about it, I just kind of thought that everyone was suicidal. I just kind of thought that that's just how we are. That's just how people are, and that everyone's struggling. And so I knew that I didn't want to feel the pain anymore, but I kind of thought that it was normal. And then when I found this healing work, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm probably not going to have to live with this forever. And that was a really freeing feeling. So I started to work on these littler traumas, and I call them littler traumas, but for some people they might be really big. And if they are your big traumas, that's totally fine too. But I started working on being bullied in school. So I was bullied every single day in primary school. I was bullied at home, as I mentioned, but at school I was like the weird kid, which in hindsight, trauma does that to you. But I was bullied for the way that I looked. I was bullied for my ears. I got told that I had big ears all the time. I was mostly bullied by boys, but I also found it really hard to make friends. So I spent most of primary school in the toilets on my own, or in like this hat bay area where you would have to go if you forgot your hat. So I'd just forget my hat all the time. And so I spent most of my time alone at school, being teased and bullied all the time, going home to be bullied. And I just felt like really unsafe everywhere I was. Like there was no like personal place that was my safe place. And I mean, my mum has always been a really beautiful, kind, gentle person, but she's got all her own stuff that was going on. So I always felt like I didn't really want to interrupt her. So because I was bullied so often about my appearance, I started to create this belief system that I was ugly. And I remember so clearly standing in the mirror at 11 years old, just looking at myself being like, why do I have to look like this? Like, why am I so ugly? Why does no one like me? Why can't I just be somebody else? And I started to get this incredibly low self-worth. And I kind of then moved into high school, and it just got worse. It just got worse. Like my friendship issues got worse. My stepbrother had gone to a different primary school, and when we'd gone to high school together, and it was the first time we'd been in school together, and we just really butted heads. And so he often got his friends to bully me. I had boys kicking footies at my head, calling me ugly slut, like every single day. And it just became my normal, but it also just sent me lower and lower and lower. And then when I was in about year 9, I made friends with this boy, Nathan. He was beautiful, the most beautiful soul. And I think he had struggled a lot too in his life. And we just became really close, and he just really looked after me at school, and we hung out on the weekends all the time, and he just became my best friend. And then a year later, at a party one night, he was walking home, and a drunken lady had swerved off the road, and she hit him, and he died instantly. And so I lost my only friend. And again, I didn't really have anyone to talk to. My parents, didn't really talk to me about that kind of stuff. So I just didn't even know how to deal with it. I just didn't deal with it. I just pushed it down. And I just kind of carried this like low self-esteem and this suicidal thoughts and comparing myself to other people and just feeling horrible about myself into my teen years and then into my early 20s. And I remember just that feeling again of like looking around when I was 19, 20 years old. And I look back now at photos and I'm like, what the fuck? I was so beautiful. But I remember looking around at these other women and being like, why is everyone so beautiful and I'm so ugly, and what's wrong with me and no one likes me? And this was just my narrative all the time. And I just felt so much less than other people, and it just couldn't be so far from where I am now. But that's the point of the story. So I then went into relationships. I was cheated on by my first boyfriend, my second boyfriend. I've been cheated on actually probably in nearly every single relationship I've been in. I've been treated poorly, and I really believe that was a reflection of the way that I thought about myself, like the kind of men that I was attracting into my life, the kind of men that I was attracted to, the treatment that I was used to that felt normal to me. And so we've just had this stacking effect of trauma. And when I met my husband, I felt like things started to get a little bit better. I continued to have, like now looking back, trauma with him around certain things that he did, which I'm not going to talk about because he's the father of my kids, and I don't feel like I need to go there to get my point across. But I did feel like things started to get a little bit better with him when I was, so I had my first son in 2016, and then between him and my second son, I had what was called a molar pregnancy. So I got pregnant, and my body, instead of growing a baby, like the baby starts to grow, and then a tumor, it's like a irregular cell growth, and the tumor starts to take over, and you basically I went for my 13-week scan and thinking everything was okay, and I had this little belly, and then I remember the man looking at me and saying to me, "There's no baby." And I laughed at him because I thought he was joking. And then he like held my hand and said, "No, you actually have this really rare disease where a tumor takes over and it kills the baby, and you just grow this big tumor, and it's actually really dangerous. We need you to get you into surgery tomorrow, because the longer you've had it in past 6 weeks, the more likely it is that it will become cancerous." And it was a really hard type of cancer to get rid of because it grows in your uterus lining. Anyway, whole thing didn't even register it because I was so used to trauma. I was like, oh, okay. Went in for the surgery, and I went back to work 2 days later, like sweating all this anesthetic out, just not even processing what had happened, back into work. And I was so go, go, go. And I was so in fight or flight all the time that I was just like, keep on going. Just don't feel it. Don't think about it. And then when in 2019, I finally decided I'd been working on all of these traumas as they were happening. And I'd been working on all of these past traumas and these things that had been happening over my childhood. And in 2019, I got to this point where I was feeling healed enough, you could say, to just recognize that I was in fight or flight and that I was about to be in burnout. I was a wedding planner at the time, and I was doing 100 weddings a season in my own business. I had staff. I was just go, go, go all the time, and I was just running from myself. And even though I was healing, I was not feeling. I was working on my brain, but my body was just crippled with anxiety and panic. And so I had Banjo, my youngest, and I realized that I needed to change. I realized that I needed to get out. So I sold my business up and was really happy with that, made a really good amount of money, and decided to go on a family trip with my ex-husband, and who was my husband at the time, and the 2 kids. And while we were on this trip, I was bitten by a tick, a paralysis tick. And when it bit me, I didn't know that it was in my neck up here. I didn't know that it had bitten me, and I just like got kind of like really dizzy and felt like a migraine. And so I went and laid down, and I woke up like 18 hours later, and my ex-husband was like, I feel like something's wrong. And I woke up and said, yeah, I think like something's really wrong. I don't feel right. And I couldn't lift my arms up. I felt like paralyzed. And we got in the car, and as we were driving, we were going to go and find a doctor's or a hospital. And I kind of like flicked my hair to the side, and he's like, oh, wow, there's a huge tick in your neck. And we didn't know anything about ticks or diseases that you can get from ticks at the time. We just ripped it out. Now, upon hindsight, that actually puts more poison into your body. But we ripped it out, and then I started to feel a little bit better, and I didn't think about it. We went about our holiday, and then over the next 4 months, the bacteria that was put into me through the tick just wreaked havoc on my body because I believe that like some people get bitten and their body can handle it. But I think because I had been in fight or flight my entire life, my nervous system and my immune system was just wrecked, shut down, non-existent. And so it just went through my body, and in a matter of 3 or 4 months, I just went so backwards in my health. Like I had no energy. I couldn't get out of bed. I was having migraines like 3 times a week, headache every single day. I was exhausted just getting out of bed. I started to lose heaps of weight. And eventually got to the point where I couldn't lift my arms, and I would start to try and grab something, and my like hand coordination wasn't working. And it was around that time that someone mentioned Lyme disease and tick illnesses, and I got tested and found out that I was positive. And so I ended up going overseas for treatment. I ended up leaving my kids, awful experience. I was away from them for like 5 weeks, and it was just even the medical procedures and things that I was having myself. Like I was having something that was almost like close to dialysis, where I had these huge needles taking blood out and filtering it and putting it back in my other arm. And it was 5 weeks of like multiple IVs every single day for different treatments, to the point where all my veins started collapsing. They had to try and put them into my feet, and even that in itself was such an awful, horrific experience. But I think that really led me to this next part. So after I got home from this treatment, I wasn't any better. I found out that I was pregnant again, and my body just couldn't handle it. I was getting like sicker by the day, and I knew that I couldn't keep the baby. So I went and had an abortion, which then after that was just like this other stacking effect of like, I don't know how much more I can take. And I was still so committed. I was still just like, I can't like let this get the better of me. Like I'm sick of struggling. I'm sick of the darkness. I'm just sick of it. And I want to be better. And so I started researching how to get rid of Lyme disease and how to heal. And I came across fasting. And I ended up finding this fasting coach named Sinclair. He's awesome. He's actually got a documentary on fasting. And I ended up finding this fasting coach, and I did this intense fasting. It was like 70 days of fasting. Not all water, but I did 12 days of just drinking water. And I ended up doing this intense fast, healed my Lyme disease, which was amazing. And out the other side of that, I feel like, and this is a little bit woo-woo, but I feel like something happened with the fasting spiritually, emotionally, or whatever, that it changed something in me. And it was about 2 or 3 weeks after I'd finished this fast, and I was feeling really good. And I remember there was this day, and this is the day that all of my memories came back. And again, it's such a wild story and such a wild way for this to happen. But essentially what happened was I was having this really good day, feeling on top of the world, and I decided to do a meditation. And I just found this meditation on YouTube. It was like something like how to increase your intuition. And I was like, cool, I need that. I'll like some higher intuition. So I listened to this, laid down on my healing bed. At this time I was already doing healing work on other people. And I laid down on my healing bed, and I put my earphones in, and I started to relax, and I was listening to this meditation. And she was like, I'm going to guide you through a series of questions, and you're going to intuitively know what to do, and that's going to start to strengthen your intuition. And I'm like, okay, cool. So you're walking up, and there's these 3 doors in front of you. And she's like, you'll see the 3 doors, and you'll have a really clear picture of them, and you'll know instantly which door you want to go through. And I was like, yep, it's the middle one. I'm going through the middle one. And I went through this door, and she said, you're now met with a path. You're going to walk down this path. And at the end of the path, there's going to be a guide who's going to guide you to a really important message that you need to know. And I was like, cool, who's going to be my guide? I was really excited. And I looked up, and at the end of the path, I saw my dad. And I was like, what the fuck? Why is my dad my guide? That's a shit guide. I want the Dalai Lama. I want some like awesome guide that's going to send me some magical message. I don't want my dad there. And so I was like, no, you have to go with it. Intuition, trust it. So I walked up, and as I started to follow him down the path, it started to get real creepy. And all of these like trees in this forest that she'd explained started to go dark, and all the trees started dying. And I was like, oh, I don't like this. And I was like, I went to grab my earphones to pull my earphones out. And then something inside me was like, oh, just keep going. Just see where it takes you, because this has got to mean something. So I pushed through and I followed my dad. And she guided us to go to a house or a building. She said there'll be a building. And I saw this building, and it was like a warehouse building. And again, it looked really scary and I didn't want to go in, but I followed him in. And she said inside this building there are 3 boxes. And in these boxes, in one of these boxes, there is a message for you. And you're going to know which box straight away. And again, straight away, it was the one on the right. I was like, that's the box. That's the message. And I opened up this box. And when I opened it up, what came out of it was these memories. And when I looked at them, I knew they were memories because I'd had flashbacks of these memories my entire life. And this is the weird bit. The 3 memories that came out of the box, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember when that happened. I remember that memory. I remember that memory. But this question popped into my mind, and the question was, why are these memories coming up? Why are these memories here? And for the first time in my life, I saw the memories for what was actually happening instead of the way that I'd learnt to see them and the way that I'd learnt to cope with it. And for the first time, and it was like I had been hit like by a bus. Like the wind was taken out of me, because I was like, I'd seen these memories of my dad sexually abusing me, and I'd seen those memories thousands of times. I had flashbacks of them when I was doing the dishes weekly, but I had not seen them in that context of, it was like all of a sudden I had gone from what's wrong with me for thinking about it to, holy shit, why is my dad doing that? And that is like how powerful our brains are. And it's actually so common. So I'd had this realization of like, whoa, okay, actually, why is he doing that? And the way that I'd coped with it was I'd always said to myself whenever I had the flashbacks, you're disgusting for thinking about that. And it would just fuel this low self-worth that I had and just push me down even further. There's something wrong with you for thinking about the memory of that thing that was happening to you. Whoa. And then over the course of, I want to say 2 months, all of my memories came back. It was like I had unlocked this box, and all of these memories that I'd had flashbacks of, or that I'd remembered, but I'd only remembered a certain part of it because I'd blocked out the rest, like they'd all come back and they were just hitting me like nonstop. And it was really, really hard because at the time my dad was still in my life, and it took a while to realize this, but what I eventually got diagnosed with is Stockholm syndrome, which is where it's traditionally used for people who are kidnapped and fall in love with their kidnappers. And it's basically a way that we can like feel safe with the person who is the most unsafe, to like trick ourselves into feeling safe and like we're not in a current threatening situation. So I developed what was called Stockholm syndrome, and I had idolized my father, and I had like loved him excessively, so that I just didn't have to think about all of the things that he'd done, and also because it was the only way that I was going to survive. So background, my dad was actually like quite a really bad man, bad to the bone, a detective once said to me. And he had started sexually abusing me from the age of 3. My first memory was I was 3 years old, so I was quite little. And it was so frequent that it, again, just became my normal. And this was kind of, you know, I say all of these smaller traumas that I've talked about earlier, they were all kind of like subsequent to this thing that was happening with my dad. And so it wasn't just the sexual abuse that was happening, and it was happening from 3 till 12. And it wasn't just the sexual abuse that was happening, it was also psychological abuse. There was also, I had a brother and a sister who he would treat differently to me. He would buy them presents and give them presents in front of me, and make me watch them like open it and not have anything for me. He would often he was constantly critical. He would be in front of people, you're this and you're that and you're annoying and go away and what's wrong with you and just shut up, be quiet. He was always putting me down, but then he would bring me into his bedroom at night and tell me all these lovely things. And so I grew up so fucking confused. And I grew up thinking that love was hot and cold and love was scary and love was supposed to be confusing and up and down and terrifying and they're supposed to hurt you. And these were all the beliefs and the realities that I had going into all those relationships, which makes sense that I've then replicated that in past relationships. So he was also, I have a really clear memory of him. I was 5 years old and he'd come home drunk from the pub and he had walked into my bedroom and he said something to me along the lines of, you know, you're naughty or you're a bad girl or something like that. And he was holding a pillow over my face so I couldn't breathe. And then he would let me breathe every so often and I would be gasping and he would hold it over my face again. And I remember he was saying to me, I'll kill you and I'll bury you in the backyard. And he was just saying it over and over, I'll fucking kill you, I'll kill you, I'll bury you in the backyard. And this continued, not the suffocation, but this narrative that if you tell anyone, I will kill you. And I knew he would. He was dangerous. He had weapons all around the house. He had balaclavas in his closet. He had guns in his closet. He had weapons stored all around the house. He was constantly telling us about how scary the world is, what we should do if someone comes and takes us. Like he was, yeah. I grew up really afraid of the world, really afraid of everyone and everything, and especially afraid of the people that you love the most and the people that are supposed to protect you. And it's wreaked havoc in my life because I wasn't able to trust anybody. I wasn't able to, you know, the people that I thought that you love the most are the people that hurt you the most. And so I just had this really fucked up view of the world and of life and of beliefs. And from all of this is when I got diagnosed with complex trauma and complex PTSD and anxiety and depression and all the labels, which I was like, I don't have that. I'm experiencing that, but I don't have that. And I'm not going to have that forever. And I started like picking up books and I'd read these books and I'd go on these blogs and I was like researching online, how do you heal from father-daughter sexual abuse? How do you heal from incest abuse? And I was trying to find like, how do you heal from this? And everywhere that I looked, it was like, you can't. You just learn to live with it. Most people end up drug addicts or prostitutes or in psych wards. Like the reality is it's pretty rare to not be fucked up from it. And you're probably just going to have to live with it forever. And again, I was just like, no, not having that. That's not true for me. I'm going to prove that you can do it. So it got a little bit worse before it got better. And when I started to process all of these memories and have all of these memories come back, it was pretty clear that I couldn't keep my dad in my life, but it was pretty clear that cutting him out was going to be pretty risky. And I went to my mum and told my mum what had happened. She wasn't with him anymore. She'd left when I was quite young. And I told her, and I feel really grateful that she straight away believed me. I told my brother and sister. They straight away believed me as well. They actually, when I told them I was sexually abused as a child, they said, was it dad? So I feel like there was an understanding there. And so they were all really supportive and behind me, and they both wanted to cut him out as well. So I made the decision to cut him out. And it was actually, you would think that from everything that I've been through with him, it would have been really easy to cut him out. But holy shit, it was hard. It was probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. And I was so conditioned to feeling sorry for him and feeling sad for him. I just felt like I'm going to ruin his life. He's going to be so angry with me, or he's going to come and kill me. I was so afraid. But again, in that moment, I knew this is what I need to do. This is the only way that I'm going to be able to heal, is to cut him out. And so I sent him a message and told him that I was going to cut him out. And he did exactly what I thought he was going to do. And he threatened to come to me, and then he called every person that I've ever known and told them that I'd lost the plot and I was making up lies. And, doesn't really matter. But yeah, he went down this crazy path. And over the next few months, I was 100% convinced that he was going to come and kill me. And I had a complete nervous breakdown. I started to have auditory hallucinations, which is like a gentle way of saying I was kind of a little bit schizophrenic. But I started having auditory hallucinations where I was in the supermarket, I remember one day, and I heard him screaming my name. And I like, he was coming down the aisle to get me, and I started running, and then I realized that he wasn't there. And it happened a few times before. I was in the shower one day, and again, I heard the front door open and I heard him coming in, and it was like I'd had bad thoughts before, but this was like, it wasn't in my brain anymore. This was in my ears. Like, I could hear his voice. And this is when someone said to me, "You're having a nervous breakdown. You just really need to rest. You need to like start healing all of this stuff." And so I went down that path of healing, feeling safe in myself. I worked on every single memory. And I think as I started to work on all those younger memories, one of the probably the worst memories that I had repressed came up, and so much in my life made sense when this memory came back. And this memory was, he'd stopped when I was 12 years old, but when I was 19, for whatever reason, I cannot make sense of it. I had had a dinner at his house one night with my siblings, and they'd gone home, and I'd continued to talk to him, and he'd said to me, "Do you want to watch a movie?" And I'd watched a movie with him, and I remember feeling so uncomfortable and like I needed to leave, but he kept saying to me, "Just stay the night. There's a bed there. Just stay the night." And I knew in my body that I shouldn't stay. I was so panicked, but I just felt like I couldn't say no. And I ended up staying in the spare room at his house that night, and in the middle of the night he came in, and as soon as I heard the door open, I knew what he was coming to do, and my whole body froze and I couldn't move. And I remember I was crying uncontrollably as he was raping me, and I said to him, and I couldn't say anything, and he just kept saying to me, "Don't pretend like this isn't what you want. Don't pretend like this isn't something that you wanted." And he kept, and I just, that was probably the biggest memory to work on. And again, I feel like it's so important to say this. It's probably hard to hear, but I feel like it's so important for me to say this part of the story and for me to say all of this, because I have so many clients who have had similar experiences and they can't speak about it because it's too much. And I've then worked with it with them, and they've then able to go on and public speak the way that I'm speaking about it. And this is the whole point. If you know how to heal, and if you actually know how to correctly process a memory, and you learn all of the things that I've learned, and you actually do the right healing work, you actually can heal it. I can tell you that story now and nothing's happening in my body. I can tell you, I could describe it in more detail, but I won't. But I could describe it in more detail and nothing happens for me because I have processed it. There was a time where I couldn't say it without crying. I couldn't say it without my lips shaking, without my body shaking. I couldn't go back into it. But once you've healed properly and you've processed these traumatic memories and you've closed them off, you can actually, they're in the past. And what's actually happened to me now is that over this period of the last 10 years or 15 years now of healing, I've actually got to the point where I've processed every single memory that has come up. I've looked at every single belief. I've looked at every single part of myself, and I have literally reprogrammed my entire existence, my entire identity, to the point now where when I tell you that story, I had to go into my notes and look through all my old notes to think about all these things that have happened to me, because it literally feels like that was a lifetime ago, because that is not who I am anymore. I don't struggle anymore. I don't have darkness anymore. It's been 3 years and it's been the best years of my life. I am happy all the time. I'm joyful. I'm calm. If something bad happens, I laugh it off. Like today, showing up late to the podcast, and, things used to stress me out, but now everything is just as it's meant to be. I've got real deep love. I'm a really good mom. I have so much fun with my kids. I love being a mom. All the things that I used to struggle with, or that I know other people struggle with, are just not my reality anymore, and they're just not coming back. It's been 3 years of just getting better and better and better. And so I feel like for people who've got complex PTSD and who've got complex PTSD and complex trauma, I feel like I'm so passionate about them knowing that that's not the end game. That's not the full stop. It's not, you have to live with this forever. This is just how it's going to be now. You actually can change it, and there is a method to changing it, and there's a way to changing it. And that's why with each of these podcast episodes, I want to go deeper and deeper into different subjects that you're asking me about and that you have questions about, so that you can start to heal, and so that you can hopefully heal so much faster than I healed. Like 15 years is a long time to be healing. I aim for all of my clients to heal so much more rapidly than that, so that they can start to enjoy their life and it gets to be good. So that's my story. That is, I guess, what makes me qualified to tell you how to heal, and makes me qualified to tell you how healing works, because I've done it. I've not only just done it like to myself, and I am the example, I've also studied pretty much every healing modality you could think of now. I've done counseling, and I've done hypnotherapy, and I've done NLP, I've done EFT, TFT, I've done somatic work, I've done nervous system course, I've done breath work, there's so many more. I've studied it from every angle, and I was not going to rest until I knew, how do you heal your mind? How do you heal your body? How do you heal from a soul? Like, how do you heal from every single level, so that it just goes boom and it all comes together? And I got there a few years ago, and I cracked the code. And so now I'm really passionate about helping other women get there faster and teaching them the right ways to heal, because there is so much information out there that is confusing and conflicting and wrong. So my episodes are going to be about that. They're going to be deep diving into why we do what we do, and also how we fix it, how we heal it, how we move forward.